happening in Minnesota tyranny, or is it anarchy, or is it just war? I spent a little bit of time in Minnesota a long, long time ago. I know the area quite well. I lived 2 years there as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yep, I was one of those guys walking around with the black tags that says the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on it, and white shirt and a tie, talking to anybody I could about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I did it in Minnesota for 2 years, and I loved it. But I would not say that I'm an authority on anything that's going on there right now, because it does look like anarchy, but it also very clearly looks like tyranny. And I don't know. I want to believe that someone is right there. I certainly look at it as if my family or friends were being rounded up and put in prisons and then shipped to another country. Even if they were from that country, I would have a hard time with that. Now, if they had committed a crime, and I know that many people across this country have lost the true definition of crime, and they've been convinced that a crime is doing something that is against a legislative statute or against a law enforcement command, that they believe that that is a crime. But the founders of this country never defined crime that way. And the Constitution was not established of crime being what another man says. That was never crime. And when I say man, I mean man and woman. Now, and before you get upset here, don't think that I'm trying to side here with a bunch of liberals burning cars and burning buildings. Just please don't go there, because that's not what I'm doing. However, if I and my family were threatened by federal agents in an unconstitutional way, I would do all I could to oppose them. In fact, I have pretty good experience with that, as many know. But I'm not going to get too much into the Bundy Ranch 2014. Now, back to a crime. This country, the people in this country have been convinced that a crime is going against somebody in government, what they have said and what their will is, or what the legislatures of a city, county, state, or federal government has put on paper. And frankly, that has nothing to do with what a crime is. And our founders were very clear about that, and they were clear that a crime was taking life, liberty, or property from another individual, harming another individual. And until another person was harmed, there was no crime. And now we have made it so that everything's a crime. In fact, we even, the police, they used to be called peace officers, and they were started called police, which, by the way, police comes from policy. Police officer comes from policy officer, enforcing policy. And now we've got away from even police, so we went from peace officer to police officer, and now we call them law enforcement officers. And so we say, what is their job? Their job is to enforce the law. The law of who? The law of man, right? The law of whatever they decide to say and do. And they make a law and a statute, same thing, I guess, in most people's minds. But now they're supposed to go out and enforce it. They're supposed to go out and they'll force it with the barrel of the gun, and they'll shoot people and they'll drag them off. And the person has never committed a crime, which is infringing upon a person's life, liberty, or property. See, that's the fundamental problem I have with what Trump is doing right now. Is I have no problem if he's going out. I mean, he has to do it constitutionally. He has to do it according to, the way that this country was established, which I need to bring up maybe in this video. But I have no problem In fact, it has to be done. It has to be done very strongly and very forcefully. Going out and bringing justice to those who have committed a crime, a true crime, which is, again, infringing upon someone's life, liberty, or property. Those people that infringe upon life, liberty, and property need to be brought to justice. But that's where we've gone stray again in this country, because now the government rounds them up and they put them in jail. Maybe a year or two down the road, they finally get a trial. Most of the time, they're put in really horrible conditions, and then they're forced into a plea deal. And then the government charges them or puts them in prison after this whole hoopla of the courts. And the victim, the true victim of the crime, because in order to have a true crime, which is infringing upon life, liberty, and property, somebody's life, liberty, and property, in order to have a true crime, you have to have a victim. So instead of the victim getting restored by the perpetrator, the government puts them in jail and then convinces all the rest of us in this country and the states and the county and everything that we need to pay for their living in there. And they just sit in there and rot. And believe me, I know, I've got some experience. I was put in prison for 2 years, federal prison, my family, my brothers, friends. So you can't tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. I saw them for 2 years in there. Now we were, of course, we had to go through the process, and we didn't take a plea deal. So we finally made it to court, to trial 2 years later. And we were found not guilty in 2 major federal trials, acquitted. And finally we were able to go home. But I saw hundreds and thousands and thousands of men in these prisons, some guilty, some not, rotting away, doing nothing to restore or repent of their crimes if they ever committed one, because about 70-something% of them were just in there for doing drugs or having drugs. Anyhow, not committing crime, but they were in there rotting away. And then when they get out, they're so messed up that they rarely become a functioning person in society again. So it just totally screws them up. And believe me, even me, with only being in there 2 years and having a family support structure, I mean, it messed me up for a long time. I couldn't even function hardly. And I was only in there for 2 years. And so people without a family structure and without support coming out, I mean, it's almost impossible for them to get back in. And so that's what we're doing. And we're doing it, the government's doing it and not restoring the victim back their damages. Their government is actually becoming bigger and more powerful, and more people in prison. That's why, statistics like this might blow you away, that you're 12 times more likely to be put in prison or in jail in the United States of America than you are in communist China. 12 times more likely. Just go look at the statistics if you think I'm wrong. Now, back to Minnesota, back to this violence, back to, is it tyranny or is it anarchy or is it just war? And again, come full circle that if this was happening to my family, I would certainly stand up against these people. Got some bikers here, we'll let them go by. I'd stand up to them and I'd protect my family the best I can. But I certainly wouldn't be burning any buildings. And I wouldn't be burning any cars unless they were ICE cars. Or maybe I'd burn an ICE car or two, I don't know. Call me an anarchist, but I wouldn't do it just to burn it. If it was in defense, then I would do it. Defense of my family, defense of my my liberty, I would do it. I wouldn't do it just to do it, just to destroy it. And what sense does it do burning a building? That building's owned by somebody. Now you are being a criminal. Now you're just burning somebody's property, someone that probably has nothing to do with any of it. And that's just ridiculous. Why would you do that? That's not correct. That's not the right way to handle things. Now, the final question is this just war? And I think there's a lot of argument to that, because war often looks like tyranny and it often looks like anarchy. But basically, it's one power trying to dominate or control another power, or trying to control land, or trying to control a policy or something like that. That's usually how war is. And I would like to point out that for, I don't know, at least the last decade, we have had these two powers that are fighting against each other. Some people call them left, some people call them right, or left and right. Some might call them even Republican, Democrat, so forth. But really what's going on is you have the communist, socialist, I would say theologists that are pushing for a different system of government, and trying to tear down, because that's how communism is, right? You have to have socialism, which we already have. We are a socialist country, and that it is. Socialism is when the government controls the means of production. Okay? That means the businesses and the land and the resources. And you cannot tell me that the government doesn't control the means of production. They don't own the means of production. They don't own the businesses. That's communism, when they nationalize and begin owning it. Now, there are parts of communism, such as the Western United States. 50% of the land and 71% of the natural resources in the United States, in Western United States, is under a communist form of government. But the businesses and the property and the land is still owned by the people, at least in title, but is controlled by the government. That's socialism. And you have to have socialism in order to move into communism. And so, I mean, that is a very documented communist, plan, and to move a country into socialism, and then they can move it into communism. But in order for that to happen, there has to be a breakdown and a completely tear down of this system, and then communism moves in. And so we see that. And then on the other hand, we have the nationalists. We have the people who put their nation over individual freedom, individual rights, over their nation, over the protecting the right of a person's property, protecting the right of a person's liberty, protecting the right of a person's life even. That somehow the nation becomes its own entity outside the sovereignty of a person. And that nation, you know, they become very patriotic to that nation, and they will kill anybody, they'll take anybody's property, they'll do anything they have to for the nation. And these are the two polarizing powers, and the answer is neither one of them. The answer is neither one of them. The answer is freedom for the individual, because nations are supposed to be about individuals. It's like having a forest without trees. It's impossible. How do you strengthen a forest? Well, each individual tree has to be strengthened. Each individual tree, the more the trees are healthy, the more the forest is healthy. But somehow the nationalists get it in their mind that they can have a forest without trees, and that it doesn't matter how healthy or how secure or how whatever the trees need to be. It's just about the forest. And that's what I think President Trump is doing. I think he is a nationalist. I cannot understand it any other way. I do not understand this, what he's doing now. I understand rounding up criminals, but you're not a criminal unless you've infringed upon somebody's life, liberty, and property. And I understand, enforcing the protection of life, liberty, and property. But I do not understand in any way just rounding up people that are good workers and producing and peaceful. I do not believe in punishing peaceful residency. And I think it's wrong. I've written about this, and I'll leave some of the things I've written about this in the comments here. When I'm done with this video, I'll put it in there, and you can read the history of migration, the constitutional principles, how it devolved to where we're at now. And basically, it's an argument that people that come to this country peacefully have the rights and blessings and freedoms of anybody else in this country. And I mean, if you don't like that, that's the way the founders believed. And that's what the Constitution was clearly about. And so anyway, here we have this situation where you have the anarchists, communist anarchists on one side that we might call left or Democrat, because they become that. The Democrat Party has become that. And then we have the nationalists and the right or the Republicans on the other side, and they're battling. And how does that battle look like? It looks like Minnesota. That's exactly what it looks like. It looks like Minnesota. And it is what it is. I mean, it's not good in any way, but that's what it looks like. And we've seen it before. And they use each other as excuses. So the more tyranny, then you have more anarchy. And then because you have more anarchy, the nationalists say, well, we got to use more force and more power. And so they do it. And then the anarchists say, see, we have more tyranny. We got to fight back. And it just ends up escalating until someone is dominated in that incident. But this is a theological thing that's going on. It's when it comes down to it, it's a belief. It's a belief of, it's an eternity view of what you truly believe about God, about good and bad, about right and wrong. And neither one of these parties are right. What is right is that an individual has rights given to them from God. And they're supposed to be unalienable, which means they are not to be alienated from you. And that those rights include life, liberty, and property. They include that. And all people that are born on this earth have a right to that. All people. Everybody. Not just citizens of the United States. Not just people in government. Not just law enforcement, if you will. I hate that term. It's such a wrong term. Not just people that work for the government that enforce the law. It's a terrible term. Not just them. Everybody is granted those rights from God, our Creator, for life, liberty, and property. And the only purpose, the sole purpose of government is to protect individual life, liberty, and property. To protect individual. Not law enforcement officers. I don't know what else to say, because that's what they've become. Not peace officers. I want to say peace officers, but that's not what they are. I want to say police officers, but that's not right either. But anyhow, their lives are not the only one that matters. Not just the people in government. Their life, liberty, and property aren't the only one that matters. Everybody equally. And I hate to say this, but including those who come to this country. They don't lose their rights just because they come here. Just because of a policy that somebody puts in place in this country, I'm sorry, they don't lose their rights. These come from God, our Creator, and He has given to everybody. And these rights extend beyond life, liberty, and property. They extend to the right to worship, the right to travel. I guess they fall under liberty. These fall under liberty. The right to trade with each other freely. These are core principles that we've just lost in this country. We've completely lost. We've been sucked into the polarization of communists and nationalists. And I'm telling you, don't get sucked in. Don't get sucked into this. Stand on what is right. Our Creator, God our Father, is not pleased with what is happening right now. He's not pleased with how we're treating each other. He's not. I feel that deep in my heart. He's not pleased with the way that we're treating each other. We are allowing wicked, because both the nationalist view and the communist view, they're both spurred by Satan. They're both spurred by wickedness. And the goal is to tear us apart. That is the goal, to destroy this great land, this promised land that has more natural resources than any other place in the world, that has been free, that is promised to be free, and that has spread freedom. Don't fall into it. Don't allow yourselves to be deceived by the same power that is spurring the anarchists and the nationalists. Do not fall into that. And I guess that's kind of the message here. There's so many principles of freedom that are not understood anymore. And I would recommend you go read the Declaration of Independence. I mean, that's one of the greatest documents. The Declaration of Independence. Read it. Read it tonight. Search it up. The Declaration of Independence. Read it or listen to it. But it very clearly states that men and women were created by God, and that they were given by God these rights. And that the sole purpose of government is to secure those rights. And that when they stop doing that, people have a right to overthrow and put new guards in. I mean, that's exactly what it's saying. It's very clear. The founders were amazing, amazing people, both men and women, that understood who God was, man's relationship to Him, and God's relationship to man. And I leave that with some thought, and I really appreciate your time, and I do hope and pray that peace will come about in Minnesota and across this country. But I don't have hope in that unless we return to these principles that we built this country upon. Thank you.